So I looked in all the American ships and I couldn't find it. And then I'm going, oh my. And I mean, it was 3/4 painted on the back of this horse. And I'm going, oh dear. And I said to my husband, because he's much better at Google search than I am, I says, dear, what ship is this? And all of a sudden he starts laughing. And he says, it's the Charles de Gaulle. It's a French ship, not an American one. American ship. And I was most mortified. The VFW horse, when they were looking at that, he actually had tears in his eyes. I think he must have been the Army guy because he was looking at the one with the tank and the American flag. It looks like it's blowing in the breeze. And they were very touched with how well that one turned out.
You make time for doing things that you like, and I like doing it, and I like this project. And so even after I was mayor, I still enjoyed it, helping make it happen. And so, it's, I don't know, it's, it's kind of like a hobby. Each city was struggling trying to find what kind of project they wanted to be involved in, what kind of celebration. Each city had something a little bit different. And so I put together a planning committee, and it started off with just a few people and grew to about 50 people. It was a big committee. So we broke it up into sections, and some were the actual centennial celebration. We had a festival and all kinds of celebration of old businesses that we had in the community. And then we were looking for some kind of project. Actually started as a fundraiser, and it was patterned after what the city of Oklahoma City had done with their buffalo. They actually had raised money to fund some of their projects by selling their buffalo. So we thought we would do horses because they kind of represented the Wild West. They were used to for people to ride in the land run. They pulled wagons, they were farm animals, so it's pretty common here. The city of Shawnee bought the first horse, and it's actually out, it's still at the Expo Center inside because it's a decoupage horse. One side was 2007, the other side was 1907, depictions of life in Shawnee at that time. Well, we started trying to sell these horses, and no one was really buying them, no one was really pushing it. So I decided that I would turn it into more of a public art project. So I took over and I made up just a real simple little flyer like this, and I emailed it out to about 300 people in the community and asked people to sponsor a horse, and we worked up a little contract, and we found some local artists that would actually paint the horses.
I got hooked into starting paint horses by a gentleman named Danny Overland, who was doing a project in conjunction with the American Diabetes Association, and he was having a horse painted. So our OBU students got to participate in helping design it, and then I ended up painting it. It was a fun project. And then when Mr. Mills was the mayor of Shawnee, kind of Shawnee exclusive, he decided the horse project would be something he'd want to do. And so I was one of the original artists who started the project to see if it would fly, and it ended up being pretty popular. So I've done several horses since then for various businesses, and enjoyed the process a lot. I'd do another one anytime someone asked. Most recent one was just a couple summers ago. It's at 45th and Union. It's a steampunk themed horse. I honestly am not sure what they ended up naming it, but it's it represents metal and steampunk because the business is a dental orthodontist, and they're trying to appeal to their teenage clientele by having a kind of edgy steampunk interior in their building. And so they decided to follow through and have a horse that had that kind of steampunk feel to it. I was really fortunate that the guy who sponsored my horse, I had done a horse for him before in Oklahoma City. My horse was probably the only one of the first group that people looked at it and went, what does it mean? You know, everyone else had a logo or a company name or something like that, and this one was just an abstract art. Now, it's based on a type of applique from Latin America called mola. And so it's a very colorful, it looks like an applique effect of one color on top of another color, and it's just abstract designs. And so it was a lot of fun to paint because it was a little bit more creative, and I was told to do whatever I wanted to do. So I didn't have someone giving me constraints about logos or about how we wanted to do it. I really appreciated that because most of the other people who were painting horses had their sponsors giving them all sorts of orders on how they wanted it done. The steampunk horse, they had a lot of criteria, and one of the problems I started with early on with the steampunk horse was I had two different people giving me directions, and their directions were diametrically opposed to one another's a lot of the time. So I would do one thing, and then one of them would call and say, no, we really wanted that, and I'd go, well, so-and-so said that you wanted this. And then I've done two here in town that were my designs, and then the public library downtown had one of my horses that I facilitated a bunch of teenagers painting it. The horse at the library was my design. I drew it on, kids painted it, and then I kind of touched it up after that.
The first number of horses we had were 12, and I really thought that would be it. And so we, had these horses painted, had our celebration. People came and saw the horses before they were installed, and we started putting them out around town, and people went crazy. They just loved them. All these businesses said, I want a horse. What's it going to take? So I kind of created a phase two, and I advertised with artists in the area and had them send their depictions of what they would like to have on a horse. And I told them, I said, look, it could be for a bank or for a casino or for, a retail store. It could be for anyone, hospitals, healthcare, whatever. And so I got this big pile of artists that wanted to be involved in this project. And then I went out and started gathering the names of the businesses, and what we did is we actually went out to St. Gregory's, and we had a little, at the Maybe Gearer, and we had like a little, what I would call pairing party, where we had the sponsors and we had the artists, and the artists had all their stuff on the wall. So we kind of connected the basic idea of the design with those companies.
When I was middle school, high school, there was the ad in the paper or something, and so my mother, who was homeschooling me and my older sister Amanda at the time, she was like, oh, look, here's the thing. She's like, so they had the template that you could download online, and she's like, let's just make a whole bunch of designs, and I don't think they had a cap on how many designs that you could put in. So they were like, so we came up with a whole bunch of different designs and submitted them, and then we went to the reception thing that they had, and my mom was like, oh, we have all these, obviously little girls, we had all these Breyer horses to paint, and she's like, oh, let's just paint some of them to look like our designs so we can see, what they would look like on the horses. So Carolyn Harris Realty chose Elemental, which was outside of OBU.
For the second round, we more worked with people. They didn't just flat choose a pattern.
I think we submitted patterns again, and then, especially for Romeo, the people who wanted a horse, they really liked what Elemental looked like, so they wanted the artist that did Elemental, which was my older sister, Amanda.
And this horse, Horse on Fire, the guy that wanted it, and his name escapes me because they always do, but his horse was colored this way. Well, except obviously the mane and the tail. And so we went out and took lots of pictures of his horse so that it could look like his horse.
Yeah, but I really like how this one, the actual horse turned out with it looks like the horse that it's based off of. Like it has this little black mark on its foot because it's that horse specifically, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Yep. And figuring out how to paint a realistic horse rather than a blue horse or a gold horse, it was a different challenge for us.
His horse was a racehorse, and he was riding it, and he did get thrown off and got left a mile away from his house.
The real key is that we wanted this to be a public art project. So the artist could incorporate an identity of the sponsor in the design, but it couldn't be like a billboard or a sign. It could be their logo or their name. So we made that happen. This was a Carolyn Harris horse. This is a Prudential logo right there. This was one of the first ones painted by the Spitz family. But it was probably the very first horse that was sold. So it's not out anymore. It got ran over by a car. All in all, total, there's been almost 50 horses. Now a lot of those are gone now. We've had some that got ran into by a car or had been broken, and some of the sponsors didn't want to continue to take care of them. So I've actually repurposed those. We've repaired them and repainted them and sold them to other businesses. So there's a lot of that around town. This was the Citizen Potawatomi Nation. Actually, it was Fire Lake Casino out on the interstate bought this. They mounted it up on top of a hill. It's really cool. But evidently, some patrons had a little bit too much to drink, and they went up and they broke it twice. This horse, man, all these are gone. This was over across from Teener's in front of the doctor's office, Conaway, called Freedom, and it finally broke. I mean, it had to be repainted. Someone tried to paint it by hand. It was awful. So we actually repurposed this one, and it's now in front of Regal Cars on Harrison. So this horse is no longer out there. The main idea was a lot of to really propose a lot of marketing and tourism and create some tourism. So they're scattered all through town, but a lot of them are at the entrances of Shawnee. So you see right off of the interstate on Kickapoo and on Harrison, two of the main entrances, you're going to see a lot of horses. And I kind of want to do a Hansel and Gretel thing, with spreading the breadcrumbs and things, where you see a horse, and you're like, oh, there's another horse, and there's another horse. As they come in off the highway, pretty soon hopefully they're in town, and they're going, oh, this is a pretty neat little town. So getting people to come in off the highway was sort of part of that goal. And we even had tour buses coming in that would come in and go through town. And so the tourism board made up a little map. This is kind of an older map, but made up a map that has the location of all the horses. There's a little dot there with a number, and on the back side of this map, let me flip this over, there was actually a number, the name of the horse, the artist, so a little bit of a background. Now there wasn't a lot of history on what the design was or what had caused the design, but there is a lot of that information available that I have made available to the chamber, which is now Shawnee Forward. So we hope that this project will continue on for a long time. Project still lives. There's several new horses that we've had installed in town, and mainly it's people that came in and they've seen the horses. They wondered what was the deal, once they found out that it was part of our tourism project and that it actually would drive people to their business, then they started wanting the horses. So that's really kind of just the highlights of how this thing started, why horses, and there's different kinds of horses. There's a thoroughbred, there's an Arabian, there's a quarter horse, those are all standing horses, and then there's the rearing stallion, which is 8 foot tall. And a lot of people like those, but that's obviously a little more expensive a horse.
There's only 2 people who chose that body shape. Such a beautiful shape, but here we tend to have a lot more quarter horses, which I think the rearing horse is very majestic, and then the regular body type is like probably quarter horsey, which a lot of people chose. But the Arabian is just like, he's so like cheerful, and the person who did the mosaic like stuff all over it, it's super impressive. I don't know what they stuck to it, but they just did designs and swirls with all these gems. I love that horse. And Ricky still falling behind. You're probably good. Didn't make it around the house.
The regal horse. There are 8 layers of gold on that horse.
Shawnee Gold, who I think was also named in a Facebook contest. They came up with that. So this horse here, which
And
my
one of
mom
my
was so
friends-
happy that they chose this design, because this was like an original design that she came up with. And she's like, so they didn't really know exactly what they wanted, but she was like, okay. So she's like, here are some designs I have, especially this one. And I think he was in silver and blue. She's like, but we can change it to your colors specifically. And so we did.
And this was the only one they even considered, and that makes me happy because I love this one.
We've done a couple touch-ups on other things, and then there was this horse that they did this beautiful like leather tooling design on, but they hadn't done anything like on his face, because they did this beautiful intricate design here. And so Chuck was like, would you guys mind coming out and giving it like more like the horse's face some personality, make it look more like a horse? So we did the eyes, and we put some markings on the face and did some markings on the feet to kind of give it a little bit of a pop. So that was pretty cool. Obviously we've been collaborating with the people with what they want, and then we kind of go back and forth like, well, this is like what you were looking for, and here's what we can do with it. And it's kind of a cool collaboration to be like, what can actually be done on the horses, and then like what we can do to make it look like an interesting piece of art.
It tickles us how many people see our art on a daily basis. And even if they, don't go, oh, Kathy and Bethany painted that, it's out there so they can see it. And that just pleases us very much that our art is out there for everybody to see.
The VFW horse was, we're trying to do it as realistic as possible. So it was like trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to do it this time, and changing the art styles is definitely a challenge.
And fun.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we're up for more.
Yeah.
Anybody wants to get a horse,
We would
go
love
through
to
it?
work with them.
We would love to work with them.
And some of them, you look at them and you're trying to figure out how the other artists did it, because as an artist you're like, okay, how did they do that? And it's the one that was by the car dealership with all
Yes.
the little dots on it, where they have like these tiny little perfect circles. So we think they must have done like stickers and like the swirl design. I can't remember where that horse is at.
It's just south of Shawnee Gold.
They must have done so many layers where they like put like stickers and then paint, and then put more stickers and more paint, and done all of these layers, because the little circles are different colors with the different layers of paint. And we're like, it's amazing. How
They
did
said
they
they
figure
had
out how to
done
do
it.
that?
They had done it with, like yard sale stickers.
Yes.
And I'm going, my head just can't.
Like
work that
for
one
them
through.
like to think about that and so many like that plan, that's pretty amazing.
That was amazing.
This horse at OK Classics used to be in front of Harvey's. It's now moved across the street to OK Classics. So it's still there. It's called Beaded Pony, and what's really cool about it is if you look at it, it's comprised of a lot of circles, and those circles have like a 3D look to them. So the artist was very clever in giving it a 3D effect, but you have to get close to it to actually see it.
I'm Jerry O'Connor with OK Classics here at 3200 North Harrison Street, Shawnee. I started OK Classics back in the 1990s and repurchased this building and remodeled it in 2000. and then I sold the dealership in 2011 and just came over here full time. The horse out front, the name of him is Horsepower, and my brother Patrick O'Connor is the one that painted the horse. On one side of the horse it says Harvey's, which was the name of our dealerships, and the other side of the horse says OK Classics, which is the name of this place. It's got over 3,000 circles on it that he painted on it, and it's been up since we first started the program here in Shawnee, the City of Horses. He's been real good eye catcher for everybody going down the highway for us. He is. I lost my brother 4 years ago, and yes, he was an artist. He done the bronzes. He's got bronzes at the Oklahoma City Zoo, the Cowboy Hall of Fame. He's got a bronze at St. Gregory's. His work's all over the country. And Pro Bass, Old Mode is one of his pieces of work. He was a very fine artist.
At some point, to be able to put together some kind of history pamphlet or book that kind of tells a lot of the information about why that design was picked and where the artists are, who they are, because some are very good portrait artists, and they're still around. So it's been a great project for the city of Shawnee.